Hi everyone, my name's Erin Griffith and I'm the Program Coordinator here at Fedora. Fedora is an open source community supported program that's funded entirely by membership contributions. It's this funding that supports staff to work on developing, teaching, engaging, and supporting Fedora users across the globe. Without our members, we would not be able to support the preservation of the vital content that is contained within the repositories of our users. If you're interested in learning more about how you can support our continued efforts by becoming a member, please see the link in the video description below. In today's demo, I'm joined by Scott Prater from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who's going to walk us through the process for migrating a small Fedora 3 repository to OCFL, then bring it up in the newest version of our software, Fedora 6.
Hi, I'm Scott Prater at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Today I'm going to show you how to migrate a small Fedora 3 repository to OCFL, and then from there, bring it up in Fedora 6. The first thing you'll need to do is download and install the migration utilities from the Fedora GitHub repo. It's a Java application. You'll need Java 11 to both build it and to run it. Note that the migration utils application reads the Fedora data directly from disk, not over HTTP. This means three things. One, the migration utils application will need to be installed on a host that has access to the Fedora data file systems. Two, you'll need Java 11 installed on the same host in order to run migration utils. And three, you should probably shut down your Fedora server while running the migration to prevent changes to the data while it's being copied over to the OCFL directory. I won't cover the steps to download and build migration utils in this demo, but you can find the instructions in the project's README in GitHub. There are a few things you'll need to know to prepare for the migration. First, you'll need to know what kind of storage your Fedora 3 instance uses. The choices are legacy, Akubra, or exported. Exported is in the case that you've exported all your Fedora data to files elsewhere, such as Atom or FoxML or something like that. My sample repository uses Akubra. If you're using legacy or Akubra storage, you'll then need to know under what directories your object and data stream data is kept. I can find this by looking at my Akubra config file. And I see here that my objects, my FIS object store, is stored under opt Fedora 3 data objects. And I see my data stream store is stored under opt Fedora 3 data streams. Now that you have that, you'll want to know how much data you're migrating, because your OCFL repository will need to be roughly the same size as your Fedora repository. It's also a good idea to know approximately how many objects you'll be migrating. Let's take a look at my sample Fedora 3 repository and how much data it occupies. And so the -L, I'm just doing a du command. The -L says follow a symlink. The -S says show the total size, and the -H says show the size in a human readable form. And so I see that my Fedora data objects and data streams together occupies about 12 gigabytes of space. That means that my OCFL file system should have at least about that amount of space available. I can use the find command to get the number of objects. And I see that by doing a count of all the object files, I have 1,344 objects. With that information in hand, I can make a directory to hold my OCFL repository content now. And we'll put everything under opt OCFL. And now we can launch the migration. First, let's make sure that I'm using Java 11. Yep, 11.0.10, so that's fine. Before we actually launch the migration utilities, I'm going to run quickly through the command line options. The migration utils README shows the command line options. Running migration utils without any parameters will also display the help page. So I'm going to go to my directory where I have migration utils installed, and then I'm just going to run it without any options. And you can see it gives you all the different options that are possible with utility. I won't go through all the parameters, but I'll cover the ones that are necessary or particularly useful. First, there's source type. As I mentioned, the utility needs to know how your Fedora data is stored. In my case, the source type is a Kubra. So source type and a Kubra. The data streams directory. That's the top level directory where Fedora data streams are stored. I found that during my previous step with preparation. Again, you only need this when using Kubra or legacy type Fedora 3 storage. The objects directory, pretty much the same thing, the top level directory where Fedora 3 objects are stored. And then the target directory. That's going to be where the OCFL data is going to be written. We had set that to opt OCFL. Now we have the working directory. This is the directory where the utility will write its working files, in particular the data stream index. If you don't delete the contents of this directory between runs of the utility, you can reuse the data stream index and that way save some time on subsequent migration runs. One sample migration I did of about 3 million objects, it took several hours to just create the data stream index before it even began migration. So that's a useful thing to know. The space for the work directory does not need to be very large. Even very large repositories with millions of data streams will only take up on the order of megabytes, not gigabytes, for the data stream index. Migration type. You can set up a plain OCFL repository or an OCFL repository with extra data that makes it Fedora 6 ready. We'll create a Fedora 6 OCFL repository. Then we come down here and we have continue on error. By default, the migration utility stops at the first error it encounters. If you're migrating a very large repository, you may want to migrate as much as you can on the first run. Look for the errors, go back, fix them, and then migrate the ones that had errored out later. If you use this flag, that enables that approach. And then finally, we have no checksum validation. And that's as part of the migration process, the utility will verify checksums on the OCFL bitstreams by comparing them to their source Fedora 3 data stream checksum. Missing or non-matching checksums provoke a warning in the logs. You want to set this flag if you want to skip this check, for example, if you haven't enabled checksums in your Fedora 3 repository. Okay, so let's go ahead and launch. I'll go ahead and put in the command that we're going to launch. So we're going to run the utility, and I'll set the migration type to Fedora OCFL. And then we'll set the source type to a Kubra. And I'll set my data streams directory as I found it before. And I'll set my objects directory. And then I'll set my target directory to opt OCFL. And I'll set my working directory where all the migration working files will be stored. And then finally, I'm going to redirect all this to a log file. The utility writes to standard out by default. I'm going to put it in a log file so that I can go back and examine it after I run it. And I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And now it's starting. This will take approximately 20 minutes to run on my host. The actual time it'll take in your environment will depend on disk I/O Speed, processor speed, and memory. Basically, your mileage may vary. It's time to go and grab a coffee. I'm back and the job is completed. Let's take a look at the log. You can see that it starts by building the data stream index right here, building an index of all the data streams in Fedora 3. And then after that, it starts migrating the objects, one object at a time. The lines processing indicate which object it's working on migrating. If no errors or warnings are thrown, then the object was migrated without incident. So you can see all these have been migrated successfully. You can see a warning here, missing invalid digest. That's because the schema data stream on this Fedora 3 object, this one right here, XML schema UWDC GML 321, does not have a checksum that can be used for verification. If we were to disable the checksum check as one of the flags, that would make these warnings go away. Let's go and see if there are any errors in the log. So, nope, no errors. I can also verify that it processed all my Fedora 3 objects by comparing the number of objects in my Fedora 3 repo with the number processed. In the preparation step, we knew we had 1,344 objects. And I see that it processed 1,344. And so that's good. They were all processed. Let's go ahead and take a look at our FCL repo under opto-CFL. And I see now that there's a bunch of stuff there. And you can see that there are data streams like the RELZEC, the DS composite model, DC, and we have different versions, version 1, version 2, and they're all in an OCFL structure. And so each one of these directories here represents a single object migrated from Fedora 3 to OCFL Fedora 6. Now we'll examine this new OCFL repo in Fedora 6. I ran the Fedora 6 one-clip web app and pointed it at my new OCFL data repository under opt-OCFL. Let's compare a sample object in Fedora 3 and Fedora 6. So here I have a Fedora 3 object starting with the PID 2PW3, and this is Fedora 6, same PID 2PW3, blah, blah, blah. The label is Klein Brothers Butcher Shop and Klein Brothers Butcher Shop. So the labels match. The created on April 15th and modified on February 23rd. Let's take a look over here. Created again April 15th and modified on the 23rd. So they match. Let's see, this object state is active. This object state is active. So the object states match. And let's check the data streams list. So here I have DC, RELZEX, bib0, tech0, RELZ struct, and admin.md. And over here, I have the same data streams. So the data streams match. And now let's go ahead and take a look at one of the children. I'm going to look at the bib0 child. So let's go over here. And the first thing we'll do, like we did with the object, is just check the properties. So I'm going to go over here and look at the bib0. Okay, and so the data stream label, mods record for this object, and this one has the same title, mods record for the object. The state is active, and the state over here is also active. The MIME type, text XML, and the MIME type over here is also text XML. And the size, this one is 3090 bytes, and this one is also 3090 bytes. And finally, the MD5 checksum. So this MD5 checksum starts with C0118, and we come over here and we see that the MD5 checksum that was carried over is the same one, so that the data stream properties also match. Now let's finally take a look at the content. And so we'll open up this one, and we get a nice mods record here. And I open up this one, and it looks like the exact same mods record. So it looks like our migration was successful using a spot check. So that wraps up this demo of the Fedora 3 to Fedora 6 migration utility. I hope this has been of use to you. And as always, if you have any questions or suggestions, the Fedora community is always ready to hear them. Happy migrating!
Thank you so much, Scott, for showing us that migration process. With the Fedora 6 production release on the horizon, we're excited to continue to share our progress. To learn more about Fedora 6 and download the most current beta release, check out the links in the video description below. You can also follow along on our progress toward production release here on YouTube, where we'll be showcasing more demo videos, or by joining us through any one of the communication channels, again listed in the video description. As always, there are many ways to get involved with Fedora, both at the community and membership levels, and we welcome any and all interested parties. Take care and see you next time.